Hello beautiful people, welcome to Remy's Fashion. My name is Remy. On this channel, we upload pattern drafting and sewing tutorials. Thank you all for subscribing and supporting my channel. I do not take it for granted. In this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to sew a Victorian corset with already made bra cups and boning. This video is all about sewing a Victorian corset. You will need some basic supplies and knowledge of how to sew in order to make this corset. This video is easy to follow and includes everything you need to know in order to make your own corset. You will learn how to sew using the corset pattern we drafted. You will figure out the right amount of boning for your project and then you will sew it all together. By the end of this video, you'll be able to create your very own Victorian corset. So let's get started. Are some of the materials you need for this project. You will need the pattern pieces we drafted in our last tutorial for this project. If you've not seen that video, I'll put the link in the description box below and on the cards above. Then you need fabric. You can use any fabric of your choice. I'm going to be using this fabric here, popularly known as Ankara. This is what I'm going to be using for my corset. And then you will need to have lining. I'm going to be lining this top, okay? Also, this is my lining. And then you will need interfacing. I have this interfacing here. This is SA. I'm going to be using it for both the lining and my main fabric. And then we're going to be using already made bra cups. So I have my bra cups here, which I'm going to be attaching to the bust part of my corset. I'm going to be using my pins to hold my pattern pieces together. You need your measuring tape, tailor's chalk. You need your boning. So this is the boning I'm going to be using. This boning, you can sew on it. That's why I prefer it. I'm going to be using my rotary cutter to cut out my fabric and lining. You can also use a scissors, and I also have a matching thread. So the first thing I'm going to do is to cut out my patterns using my Ankara. Okay, I will also cut out the same on my lining pieces. So whatever I cut out on my fabric, I'm going to cut it out on my lining and my interfacing. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and cut on fabric. So these are my pattern pieces. I've laid them nicely on my fabric and I'm using weights to hold them down, okay? And then I have added 1/2 inch seam allowance on the front. That's the center front, the first pattern piece, the second one, and the third one. Because I have added seam allowance when I was drafting my pattern, I added 1/2 inch seam allowance on the side and on the hem. So because of that, I'm not adding any extra seam allowance on those two places. So now I'm adding 1/2 inch seam allowance on this side, the center front, because I want two pieces of all of them. So I've added 1/2 inch seam allowance on the first pattern, that's center front, the middle, and the side. I did the same thing for the back. And then for this second one, because like I said, I'm not going to be sewing my corset with a yoke. So I'm going to fold this in. So I'm folding this in, okay? So I want it straight. And I'll put it down like this. Then I'm going to add 1/2 inch to the top and then to this side as well, okay? I'm going to do that now and then I'll show you what they all look like before cutting out. I have placed my pattern pieces on my fabric and I've added 1/2 inch sewing allowances round the pattern, except for the sides and the hem. So, and I'm going to be cutting 2 pieces each on fabric too, for the front and the back. So like I said earlier, in this video tutorial, I'm not going to be using the yoke. So for the back, I folded in the armhole. You see how I folded it in? So anytime I want to use the yoke, I'm going to unfold it and then I'm going to cut it just as it is. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm not going to be using it, so I folded it in. So now I'm going to cut out, and then don't forget to put in your notches. I'm going to put notches on here, all the sides. This will connect to this, and then this will connect to this, and then this will connect to this, and then this is my zipper allowance. I'm going to notch that as well. Before I take off my patterns, I'm going to notch where the zipper is going to be as well. are my pattern pieces for both the front and the back. Okay, so you see how the back is, the front and the back. So after cutting out my main fabric, I will do the same thing on my lining material. I will also cut out interfacing for both the fabric and lining. So that means for each pattern, we have 4 pieces. That is main fabric and interfacing, lining and interfacing. I'll go ahead and cut them out, and then I will iron on interfacing onto my fabric and my lining, and then I'll show you what they look like. So these are our pattern pieces after cutting out on fabric, on lining and interfacing, and I have ironed on all the interfacing for all my pattern pieces. So you see, if I take them off, this is what you have. You add your notches. I have notched my zipper allowance. So the next thing we're going to do is to prepare them for sewing. So I'm going to sew this to this, and then this is going to be on this one. Okay, so I'm going to take them one by one so that I can show you and you're not confused on how to assemble them. So these are my front pattern pieces after cutting out and ironing on interfacing. So this is my center front, this is the second one, and this is the third one. On the opposite side, this is my center front, this is the second one, this is the third one. So now all you need to do now is join them together and sew. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, once I take out this, so I'm going to join this and this together. So right side facing right sides. I made provision for 1/2 inch sewing allowance, and that's what I'm going to be using. Okay, so I'm going to sew this to this. Okay, and then this side to this side. This is my side front. So this we go this, like this. Okay, so like this, you see? And then this is my center front, and then this is the other piece. So these two we connect here, and then I'll connect this to this. Okay, like this. So see? So this connects to this, and then I'll connect this to this. And then I'll connect these ones. This is the center front. So connect this to this, and then I'll connect this to this. You see the connections? This is where we're going to add in our bra cups. This is where we're going to be putting our boning channels. And for the back, this is the center back. See, I've done my notches. So put your notches so that you know where your zipper allowance is going to be. So right side facing right side. This is the first set. Right side facing right side, like this. This is the first one. I'll take the second piece and I will add here. Right side facing right sides. And then this is my center back. These are my notches for my zipper allowance, okay? So for the back, I'll go ahead and join this together. Join this together. For you not to get confused, you can still put an indication. I know this is my top. I can put T there because I've taken out my pattern pieces. So I can put top as T. So that way you know this is your top, and then this is the bottom, and these are your zipper allowance. So once I join this to this, I'll join this to this, and this is the center back. This is where I'm going to be putting my zipper, okay? So this is the back. So I'm going to go ahead and I will do the same thing I did for this for my lining pieces, and then I'll go and start sewing them together, both the front and the back. After drafting your patterns, always make sure that you test your patterns on a test fabric, like a muslin or calico, and then make whatever adjustments you need to make on the pattern before cutting out on your beautiful fabrics. So now we have all our pattern pieces. I've shown you how to assemble them. So the next thing we're going to do now is to start sewing. We've already assembled them. I left 1/2 inch sewing allowance all around my pattern. So you sew with whatever sewing allowance you left. So I've sewn the back, and this is what it looks like. So when I finish sewing, I'm going to iron the seams open, okay, like this. I'm going to iron it all open. So now I'm going to sew the front. And because we've already assembled it, so you will not be confused. It is easier to sew. Now you know what comes after what. That is why I took my time to show you how to arrange the pattern pieces together. If you're still confused, you can still take your pattern paper and then find out which one is which. But just like I showed you, I have already assembled all the pattern pieces together. So I'm just going to be sewing one after the other. So whatever you do for your main fabric, you do for your lining as well. I'm just going to show you the main fabric and then I'll do the lining. So I'm now going to sew the bust area on both sides. So after sewing the first one, this is what it looks like. See? So when I turn it in, this is our cup. So I'll now sew the second side. So you see, I finished joining the front part. I'm going to press open my seams, all of them. So this is what it looks like in the front. That's my breast cups. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing I did for the front. I'm going to do it for my lining pieces. So after sewing the front and the back, so the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to attach the back to the front on the main fabric. These are my sides. This is the side for the front and this is the side for the back. So I'm going to right side facing right side. I'm going to join them together and then I'll do the same thing for the other side. So I have joined the back to the front and this is what it looks like. So this is my joining. Okay, so this is our top. So this is our back. This is where I'm going to be sewing in the zipper. So the next thing I'm going to do now is exactly what I did for my main fabric. I'm going to do that for my lining pieces. Once I'm done with that, the next thing I'm going to do is to iron my seams open. So after joining all my pattern pieces together, this is what our corset looks like. So this is the right side of the fabric and this is the right side of the lining. So this is the lining. All I need to do now is give it a good press and iron open all the seams. And this is the main fabric. This is what it looks like after joining all the pattern pieces together. So I'm going to iron open the seams of the main fabric and the lining. So this is the inside. So I'm going to iron them open, both for the main fabric and the lining. And this is the inside of the lining. So now I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to iron open the seams and then I'm going to shape in the bra cups. After ironing the seams open, this is what I have. This is the right side and this is the wrong side. This is the inside of the lining. This is the inside of the main fabric. And this is the right side of the main fabric. This is my Regilene boning, and with this boning, I can sew on top. The next thing I'm going to do is to give my corset structure by sewing in the boning. I'm going to sew in my boning. I'm going to leave 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top and at the bottom, okay? And then I will put it on here. I will sew. So I'm just going to be cutting 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top and at the bottom. I'll put it on here and I will sew. I'm going to do that for all of them. So after sewing in the boning, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to attach my bra cups. I'm going to be using already made bra cups and then I'm going to attach it to my bust. To attach it, I'm going to make sure I attach the middle of this top. You can fold it like this and then notch. And then I will put it in the middle like this. I will leave 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top. And then we'll sew on the top, at the bottom, and on the sides. And that is going to secure it and put it in place. Alternatively, you can use your hemming glue. I can put my hemming glue in here and then I can attach my bra cups to my main fabric. Whichever one you prefer, it's okay because we're going to be covering these bra cups with the lining. So by the time I attach my bra cups like this, once we finish sewing, the lining is going to be on top. The lining is going to cover it up like this. This is what it's going to look like. When I was ironing, I notched the bottom of my bust, okay? I notched it so that it can lay flat like this. I notched this side as well, and then I notched the lining. Make sure you notch yours as well so that it can relax and lay flat. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to go and sew in our structure using our boning on my main fabric, and then I will attach my bra cups. I will now sew my boning to all the places that I joined, okay? All those places, both for the front and the back. So this is my boning. So I'm going to take it and I'll measure. If I want to add it to here, for example, I'm going to leave 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top and at the bottom as well. So I'll measure, leave 1/2 inch seam allowance at the bottom and at the top, and then I'll cut. The edges are very sharp so that it does not injure you. You can curve it to eliminate the sharpness. Okay, so that it's not too sharp. You can do that for all of it. Another thing again, you can see how it's bending. For it to be straight, you can decide to just iron it down. You see how it is now? I'm going to iron this piece now so that it's just straight and it's not curvy anymore. And to iron it, put it on top of your table. Use a piece of cloth to cover it and then you iron so it lays flat. So I'm going to go and do that now. And then I'll show you what it looks like after ironing. So after ironing my boning, you see how straightened it is. Make sure you put a piece of clothing over it because this is plastic so that it doesn't melt. At the edge, you can also sew in a piece of fabric to the edges before stitching to your top. And I'm going to sew. So I'm leaving 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top, and then I'm going to be sewing on both edges, on the right hand side and on the left hand side, in the middle of my seam line. Sewing it on one side, I'm going to sew it on the other side as well. So this is what it looks like on the right side. So this is one side done. I'll sew it on this side as well. So after sewing in my boning, this is what it looks like on the right hand and on the left hand side. And on the right side of my garment, this is what the boning looks like. So I'm going to now go ahead and I'll sew the boning on all the places where I have the joinings. I'm going to measure my boning, leave 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top and at the bottom, and then curve the edges. You can as well, like I said, you can cover it with fabric. Put a tape on the top, maybe double-sided tape, and then sew a fabric to the tip, the top and the bottom, and then I will sew. What it's looking like so far, and then you see our structure is coming together. So I'm going to go ahead and do the remaining. I like to put fabric at the top, both the top and the bottom. What I do is I wrap it with hemming glue. After wrapping it with hemming glue, I will now put a piece of fabric on top. I will iron it on. Once I iron it on, it stays. You see, it stays on. And then I can now sew on it. Because if you've ever tried wearing a dress or a top that the top has not been rounded and then there's no fabric on it, or you did not use maybe a lighter to remove the sharpness of the edges, and you wear that garment, it's very uncomfortable. So when I'm making any garment, top or dress that I'm going to be using boning, I like to use this for the edges. It doesn't have to be the whole top. It can be maybe the edges underneath the armpit. You can even cover the whole boning as well. So I'm going to now sew this on. So this is the boning all done. So I've completed the boning. I've sewn in the boning to every joining. So the next thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to sew in my zipper on my zipper allowance. I'm going to do that now, and then I'll show you what it looks like. I've sewn in my zipper. This is what it looks like. This is the inside. Okay, so this is my top. It's coming together. The next thing I'm going to do is to add my bra cups. These are the bra cups. These are my already made bra cups I'm going to be adding to my corset. Let's start with this one. I'm going to place it on the bust area. And before I do that, you get the midpoint, and you can even notch it just a bit. Once you notch it, you can now place it on the bust area, okay? And then I want the mid bra cup to be at the midpoint of this channel. You can pin it to hold it in place before sewing. Just place it how you want it and make sure it's sitting properly. And then I'm going to pin. This is the bottom. So I'm going to stitch the top, the bottom, and the sides to hold it in place. You can pin it or you can tack it with thread and needle before sewing. And then you do the same thing for your second one. Just a tiny notch, nothing much. See, I'm just going to stitch the top, bottom, sides, top, bottom, and sides just to hold it in place. We're still going to be using our lining to cover it, so it's still going to be concealed. I will now attach my bra cups to my main fabric. See, I've secured one, so I'm going to go ahead and secure the other one. I tacked here, here, here. I'm going to do here, and then I'll finish up the other bra cup. After securing the bra cups to my top, this is what I have. Okay, I've secured it, top, bottom, sides, okay? So this is what it looks like. And then this is the right side. So the next thing we're going to do now is to sew the fabric and lining together. Right sides facing right sides. So this is my main fabric. I will turn the right side, and then this is my lining. I will turn the right side. So I'll place them right side facing right sides, lining and fabric, starting from the top. So I'm going to align them and make sure they match. So I'm going to sew from the beginning all the way, top all the way down to this side. Okay, I'm going to match them. I'm going to use my pins to hold them together neatly, and then I will sew all the way down. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to sew at the top. That is right side facing right side, both my main fabric and my lining at the top from one edge to the other edge. I left half an inch sewing allowance, and that's what I'm going to be using. Try as much as possible not to sew on your boning. So after sewing it, so this is what it looks like. And when we turn the right sides, this is what we have. So this is what we have. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to notch. I'm going to notch where we just sew. I will notch it from one edge to the other, and then I'm going to stop stitch on my lining. I can now cut out the zipper. That's the top. I don't need this anymore. And then I will now notch. And be careful not to cut into your stitches. I will now turn it to the right hand side, and then I'm going to top stitch on the lining by spreading it open and placing all the seam allowances on the lining, and then I will top stitch. So this is what it looks like. So everything will just lay flat on the inside. That's the essence of top stitching on the lining. So the next thing we're going to do now is to sew the bottom closed. So just like I did for the top, I'm going to sew the bottom closed, and I'm going to sew from one edge to the other edge. So now I will sew the bottom part. After sewing the down part, so this is what it looks like. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sew my zipper on the lining. I'm going to close the zipper on the lining on this side. So I'm going to sew on my stitch line. I'm going to follow the stitch line that I use for my main fabric. I will notch the bottom. When you're doing this, be careful so that you don't cut into your stitches. You can reduce the bulk at the bottom. That's all done. All that is left for us to do now is to close up the second side. I'm not going to close it up entirely. I'm going to leave a bit of space so that I can bring out our corset. So I'm going to sew from the top. I'll leave a bit of the space, enough for me to be able to bring my top out, and then I'll seal up the rest. So we're done. I'm going to bring out our top now. Our Victorian corset is ready. After ironing our Victorian corset, this is what it looks like. This is the right side and this is the inside, all sealed, nicely and neatly finished. You can either sew the part we left open to turn the corset, or you use hemming gum to iron it closed. Hope this tutorial was helpful. If you got value from this tutorial, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe, like, and share. If you have any questions or suggestions, I'll be in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. See you in my next tutorial. Take care and God bless.